Hey there, David Gordon from TheaterMania here. It is Wednesday, October 21st. I'm here with Marie Cisco, theater producer. You recently launched a new company called Cisco & Co. Productions. I'm really excited to talk about it. It's got a really cool mission, and I'm really happy to be talking to you. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Tell me about your company.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about starting a production company for years now. I went to undergrad in Chicago and worked there professionally when I got out of school for about 4 years. And I went to grad school there and I did an interdisciplinary arts program. And it was there that I decided, I wanted to be a producer. Before then, I had been directing and doing like audience development and marketing stuff. And I was like, I want to produce and I want to have my own space to produce. And I didn't know how to do that because in undergrad, you're kind of taught that if you want to be a producer, you A, have to be on Broadway and you B, have to have a lot of money to do that.
Right.
And I was like, have none of the things. So I don't really know how to do this. So I moved to New York and, struggled and failed trying to start my own company and not really knowing how to make money doing it. And so I went back into institutions and kind of became an institution baby. And then after doing that for a while and sort of becoming exhausted, I was like, I have these ideas. I have these things that I want to do. I've always wanted to make space for Black artists to do their work in a space that feels safe and nurtured. I want it to be of service to people who wanted a space to do that. And so I was like, it's the time. It's the time. Corona has given me a lot of time to think and process and plan. And so I was really able to map out what I wanted to do and what I wanted it to be. And ultimately, it's starting a production house that is focused in developing work of Black artists or artists of the African diaspora. And this is film, it's theater, it's digital media, it's any new idea people are coming up with during this time of exploration and creativity. Yeah, I want it to be a training place. So artists who are interested in being directors or being producers or being art administrators who don't know where to do that or don't have money to go to grad school or undergrad, figuring out how to bring in mentors and people who are in the field doing this and training and creating a pipeline so that we no longer have this issue of people saying, well, we want, diverse people in our institutions or at Wells Fargo or wherever, but we can't find them. They're not there.
Yeah.
And so how do we sort of like create a space where we're shining a light on these are the people, they're here, they're being trained, and they're ready to go out in the field and do so. And then producing all of these great things and projects that come our way. So that's sort of the gist of the company, yeah.
And I feel like that pipeline is really hard to figure out. I mean, I don't know what it's like elsewhere across the country, but I know in New York, there's always that perception of Broadway is the be all end all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not.
Exactly.
And the nonprofit system is just so hard to get into as an aspiring anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember like even when I moved to New York, I had been applying at the Public in different positions for like years and, didn't even get an interview.
Yeah.
And part of why I got the interview for the line producer position at the Public is because I had a friend who worked there, so I had it in, so it's all about, it's all about relationships. It's not necessarily about your resume or where you went to school or like your experience. And so it's very much sort of like an elitist, these institutions in the nonprofit sector are very much elitist in that way. And so there's a lot of access. And if your institution is predominantly white and there's people of color who don't necessarily aren't connected to white people, or like all their friends are Black or, then they have no in.
Yeah.
And so those are all of the way in which systemic racism plays into people of color not having access.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you're working on at this moment with your company? I know you've got some cool projects in there.
Yeah, so one of the projects that is very much out of the scope of things that I usually do is I am putting together an anthology called Post-COVID Reimaginings from the Mind of Millennials. And so I reached out to about 25, varies from actors and directors and producers and art administrators and dancers and choreographers who are all of the millennial generation, and asked them to reimagine what the live performance world can or should look like post-corona. And I gave them the freedom to have those things based in reality. Like it could be a very real world that you want to see, or it could be a complete fantasy. It could be on another planet, like whatever, don't limit your imagination to what you want your world to be. And so those writers are in the process of writing. I have a visual artist who is creating visual components for each of the reimaginings. And that's going to be released in February.
That's amazing. I feel like there's not enough post-COVID reimaginings going on, so I'm glad to know that there's at least one person that's trying to do it and figure it out.
It's like we're an opportunity. We can sort of create what we want it to look like. We've all agreed that it's kind of been. So, like, what do we want it to look like going forward? And I really wanted to focus on millennials because I felt like there were a lot of think pieces and articles coming out that focused on what the world should be and what it is from the voices of older, more elite, artists in the business, the Broadway actors or the well-known actors. And I was like, these are some of the people who have created the problem or perpetuated the problem. So, like, the millennials, are the people who are going to be taking over. So those are the voices that I want to hear from.
And that is one of the many problems with the nonprofit New York theater scene. It's an older generation that doesn't want to let go or doesn't want to adapt with the times, or are afraid to, or are afraid of, not for a lack of a better word, turning off their audience, like their subscription audiences or whatever. Not putting the forest before the trees, or whatever that expression is. You know what I mean? It's like they're not forward thinking.
No, yeah, they're very much, because they're comfortable a lot of times, So it's like you don't need to reimagine a new world if you're comfortable in the one you're living in.
Right. But what they never realize is that eventually the world they're living in is going to come down. The subscription audience is going to rapidly die out. And then they're going to be left with a building and no audience because they haven't created the pipeline for new stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I am in a space where I'm tired of trying to convince the generation before me to do these things, or to start thinking about, different ways of making work or engaging with audiences. I think I'm in a space where I'm like, I just want to figure out how to create that and find the people who are already on board with creating that, instead of convincing people that we should be seen or that we matter, or any of those things. So I've sort of given up on people with that mindset.
Yeah. And to that end, one of the things that you created over the summer was a spreadsheet of all of the nonprofit theaters across the country, and either statements they made or statements they didn't make in the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests, the racial makeup of their theaters, of their boards and companies and whatnot. What was your impetus for creating that?
Yeah, so I was in a group text with a few friends, and one of them sent an image or a screenshot from Instagram account of one of the companies that we had all worked at. And she was like, da-da-da is going on, business as usual. I think they were like promoting a fundraiser or making cocktails or something. And it was just a very bizarre moment in history. It was just tone deaf, I think, for anyone to be posting things of like celebratory moments in the wake of the pandemic, Black people dying at a disproportionate rate, the murder of George Floyd, and the protests. Like it was just like so many things happening. And so it was just so bizarre. And so I was like, I wonder who else is like posting, random regular things like this. And so I kind of went down this rabbit hole, and I found other friends who were calling, theaters out on Facebook. And I was like, I'm just going to start like, compiling a list and like, let's just see who's like doing this. And I first only shared the list with like 20 artist friends. And I was like, hey, y'all, I've noticed this happening. I've seen some of you speak out on it. Let's just like, start compiling a list. We've worked at these institutions, they make money off of diversity funding. Like, we need to hold them accountable when we're on the other side of this moment. I also have a lot of free time, you know? And then I was like, I'm going to reach it out to, share it with the larger group. So then I shared it with the Theater Folks of Color group on Facebook. And I was like, hey, you guys, I've noticed this. Let's just start compiling this list. And at that time, it was open to anybody. And then I shared it on my personal Facebook page. And I think in like 2 days, it was over like 300 names added to it. But my impetus was not to, I think a lot of people think that it was a call out to theaters to make a statement, and it wasn't. It was just to acknowledge theaters that hadn't made a statement.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, people started scrambling to make statements, but my intention was never to ask anyone to make a statement. I just wanted to sort of shine a light on who wasn't saying anything. And then Victor Vasquez, who is the owner of X Casting, reached out to me and he was like, hey, I wanted to start a separate project where I start to pull in all the statements that people have been making in order to hold them accountable to them at a later point. And I was like, well, just collaborate with my spreadsheet, since most of these, people are on here. And so it just started to snowball into a bigger project from there that is still,
growing.
Yeah. So we're in the process of creating visuals and charts and graphs and all this jazz.
How many theaters got offended by?
A lot. Randomly, not as much as before, but randomly get emails like, hey, this isn't correct, or we we think this is divisive, or just like a lot of people were offended. There was a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. And at the time I was just sort of like, well, you should have made a statement, or
you should do better.
Yeah, do better. It was a lot of like, well, our board has to do this and like da-da-da and da-da-da. And I was like, well, maybe this will teach you to come up with a better system to react to emergency situations. Yeah. Like blaming it on your board is not enough.
Yeah. Just do better.
Just do better. Yeah.
And it's not as hard as everybody makes it out to sound. You could literally change it. And that was one of the things, the We See You White American Theater and all of that coming out. These things are so easy to change. A lot of the times, I mean, beyond the inherent problems with like rehearsal rooms and personnel, a lot of times for me, it's just put that play on the main stage instead of the secondary stage because we don't think people will come to see it. Like there are easy fixes that no one seems to want to acknowledge in a lot of these theaters.
Exactly. Very easy fixes. It's even like, opening up more seats to the people that the play is serving, or lower ticket prices, or to minority groups, or to different communities. It's always like, well, how are we going to make this goal, or how are we going to da-da-da-da-da? And it's like, you have the money.
Right.
You have the money. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I know you have the capacity to do this, but there's almost like a resistance, I think, because it's like, well, if we let them do this or we say this, then like they're just going to take over everything. And so there's an actual fear.
Yeah.
Of being equitable, because it means that you have to let go of some power of control in order to actually be equitable. And I think what we're realizing is that people just do not want to do that.
Right. And it really makes me sad because I run the Outer Critics Circle, which is one of the awards giving organizations that's not the Tonys. And so often I'll see a great play in a stage 2 of somewhere that's like, the black box with 100 seats or whatever. And it's a play by a Black writer or an Indigenous writer, a BIPOC artist. And, it'll be one of the best things I've seen all year. And I'm not able to nominate it for anything because they don't invite nominators or voters to see it because it's in the stage 2 and they don't have enough seats. And it disenfranchises writers that are up and coming and, 25 and having their first productions.
Yeah, it's sad, and and I don't, and even in this moment where we're sort of like shining a light onto all of these things, there's still a lot of like uninformed decisions being made. Like there's a lot of people of color in institutions being appointed to secondary positions.
I've noticed a lot of that, all of it.
you know,
I've noticed that happening a lot lately.
it is happening a lot, and it's just a band-aid, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because they aren't actually addressing the systemic issues within the organizations and the institutions, and the people in charge aren't addressing their personal biases, their personal stereotypes, their personal internalized white supremacy. And so nothing's going to change until you deal with yourself. You know what I mean?
I look at some of those announcements and I'm like, that person is not an associate anything. That
Yeah,
person should be running the place.
exactly. Exactly.
Going off on that, what do you want post-COVID theater to look like? Like, what's your version? What's your essay or whatever for the anthology you're putting together?
Yeah, but I don't know. I think why I haven't written it yet is because I don't even know if we still call it theater. Like, I think it is going to reinvent itself. I think the way we make theater and the way we consume theater is going to reinvent itself. And so I think overall, I want it to look free. I want people to be free to make and create however they want. I want people to feel free to enter spaces and not feel like they will be silenced, that their creativity will be silenced. I want people to feel free to not only think that Broadway and off Broadway and the shiny non-profit theaters are the only places that they can work that add value to them. I want people of color to not compete, to not feel like they have to compete to be the one Black person doing this or the one Black person, you know, doing this, or because there can only be one at the moment. So I think I want us to enter a space where we have the freedom to create without limitations and boundaries and out of the guise and the foothold of white supremacy.
Marie, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. It's been lovely. It's been energizing talking to you. It really.
Great. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Sure. And thanks everybody for watching. Be well.
Bye-bye.